So the Constitutional Court has dismissed an application by the DA challenging a decision by the IEC to reopen candidate lists for the November elections. That ruling yesterday has paved the way for parties who had missed the August deadline for the submission of candidate lists to do so by the end of business day today. The judgment does not, however, prevent political parties from challenging the IEC for what they deem as favouritism towards the ANC during the course of the selection process. So, should we expect any further litigation against the IEC after voting day? Let's unpack this with you now. Bring in the Commission's General Manager of Electoral Operations, that's Granville Abrahams, who joins us via our video link this morning. And Granville, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for making time for us here on the AM Report this morning. I wonder if I can just use this opportunity to perhaps gauge how well the registration process has gone, especially considering that now officially no one is really able to register, ordinary South Africans that is, for the upcoming polls. And I ask this against the backdrop of, call it anecdotal recollections from a lot of people who actually struggled with the online registration process yesterday.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think, first of all, we need to consider this in the light that the online registration facility is an additional facility and has been available since the 14th of July. Yes, we accept there were some difficulties, but these difficulties was largely caused by a last-minute rush. Since the 14th of July up until last week, the beginning of last week, there have been no challenges whatsoever on the system. One of the challenges that we have is our mapping system or the location services, and a number of our applications available to the electorate out there use the exact same services. So at any one time, just to give you an idea, at its peak during late last week and over the weekend, we'd have up to 40,000 people concurrently trying to use services that access those location services, and that caused a bit of a strain. We had about 20 servers that we had added, but the processing capacity was not an issue. It was more in terms of the rush, simultaneous rush to make use of location services. We would have loved to have done much better. Right. There is a big registration gap out there. There's about 15 million South Africans, if one compared to the national population register, that are not registered. Not that we expected to get all of them, but you can see for yourself that there's a big pool to fish in. However, the figures under the circumstances, as you've mentioned, and compared to previous registration weekends, if you compare to that, we did reasonably well.
So, Granville, I don't want to misquote you. So what exactly would you say is your message then to people who, as you've admitted, have been met by challenges yesterday within the confines of when you can still register, but couldn't because essentially the system was incapacitated given the rush? Are you saying, well, you left it a bit too late and it is what it is?
Well, what I'm saying is that at the Electoral Commission, we have made sufficient facilities and given sufficient opportunity. Online, for registered voters, the ability to change your online address online has been available since 2015. And the registration weekend also gave an opportunity, as well as continuous registration at our offices. So it is regrettable that there are people that never had an opportunity to either update their registration details or alternatively for new voters to register. However, we have to work within the legislative framework, and in terms of that, the fact that the Minister for Cooperative Governance proclaimed the election yesterday means the voters' roll is closed. So we cannot, unfortunately, reopen the voters' roll. There has to be an end. And there will always be people, whether it was now online or people who missed the registration weekend, that's going to miss out. However, we have to work in terms of timelines.
I hear you, and I don't mean to harp on this, but I'm sure you can appreciate how things become slightly awkward. There are people, quite frankly, who were still within the prescribed deadline. In other words, they tried to register before midnight. They couldn't because, as you admit, there were challenges with the website. And the message the morning after almost feels like it's unfortunate, but you're going to have to deal with it. I mean, how do we reconcile that discomfort? And that's just putting it mildly.
I think, let me first of all just put the record straight. It's not that the system didn't work at all. It's just that there was long queues, if you could put it that way, and people were processed. I sat here in my own house. I had guests last night. They took out their phones and they were able to register. So whatever problems we had earlier during the day, we were able to resolve. And I could also monitor and see the traffic. And I saw that as the night went on, the traffic declined. And as the traffic declined, it became easier. So those who were persistent enough would have had the opportunity to be able to get on. But that does not detract from the fact that there were challenges over the weekend and yesterday as well.
All right. Let's move on to the Constitutional Court ruling that was released yesterday, essentially pushing back against the DA's bid to prevent you from actually even having the candidate registration process open. That process is closing today at 5 p.m. Part of what the DA is gesturing at, though, is, yes, there won't be any more litigation, at least until the 1st of November, but there may very well be challenges after that, the perception being that what this process has done is favored the ANC. What's your response to that?
You know, as the referee or as the administrator of an electoral process where the stakes are high, it is not uncommon for the referee to come under the spotlight, and we welcome this. It's important that the Electoral Commission be held accountable, but it's also important that those who do so responsibly. We welcome the judgment. We will now add that to our electoral jurisprudence, and it will enrich the way going forward. However, and we have made this call many times, the first time it surfaced, we said if there is anyone that has any evidence of the Electoral Commission acting in a way that is becoming, that we must bring forward that information. And up until now, there has been no information other than just allegations. So being held accountable and being under the spotlight is, for us, is par for the course, and that is the way we prefer it. It is not something that we will shun away from. But it's important that we don't have unfounded allegations.
Yeah, it almost feels like we can get to the business of the elections now that all the litigation is behind us. One wonders, though, how concerned you are about how the turbulence, for lack of a better word, has affected the credibility of the IEC as we count the days now to the 1st of November.
Well, it has been tough, but it's important that we stick to our task. If we had allowed ourselves to be distracted, we wouldn't have gotten this far. So today is a big day for us. Hopefully, all the parties get it right today. We still have all of the nominations that we had for the previous round. So we hope that we're not going to have too much pressure today.
Right.
I think that the only pressure today would probably be mainly from our independent candidates who've made a last-minute decision, but I think all the parties would have probably by now have had their ducks in a row and have sorted out their nomination process.
The allegation by many parties, including the ANC, but certainly not only the ANC, was that, again, the IEC's website simply couldn't handle the traffic during crunch time. Now, for whatever reason, humans typically do leave things for the last minute. In some respects, one would expect the IEC to anticipate that. Are you bringing in any lessons learned, given the experience in August, about how to make things better this time around?
Let me first of all explain to you how our candidate nomination system works. Those who opt to use the online system, they work within their own space. When they nominate or capture their candidates, we cannot see what they do. So we give them an opportunity in their own environment to populate all of their nominations. And only when they are done, all that remains for them when they interact with us is to press a button. So they do not need to use online services to nominate candidates. So if candidates experience challenges or parties experience challenges whilst they are doing their own nominations in their own space, we also need to consider their own environment, their bandwidth, their connectivity, their machines, etc. We cannot be held accountable for that. It's only once they have pressed that button when they start interacting with us.
All right. Thanks very much for your time. Hopefully it'll be a much smoother process now than it was in August, given just the tailspin of litigation that the moment in August certainly put not only the IEC, but in some respects the rest of the country as well. For now, let me thank you for your indulgence. That there is the IEC's General Manager of Electoral Operations, Granville Abrahams, joining us via our video link. Once again, thanks very much indeed.